Good day and welcome to the Patently Strategic Podcast, where we discuss all things at the intersection of business, technology, and patents. This podcast is a monthly discussion amongst experts in the field of patenting. It is for inventors, founders, and IP professionals alike, established or aspiring. In today's episode, our experts take on the future of the web, Metaverse. It's the buzziest of the buzzwords in tech today, and will soon be joining the ranks of AI and ML as requisite keywords in the next generation of pitch decks and patent applications. But what are the core components of the Metaverse? And what are their implications in the world of intellectual property? The Patently Strategic Podcast will be exploring this topic over the course of several upcoming episodes. But we begin our journey today with Web 3.0, the third major iteration of the internet. While it may prove to be the next great tech revolution, the broad shape and definition of the Metaverse itself is still more firmly baked in science fiction than in commercial tech reality. Many of its core building blocks, however, are likely right in front of our eyes. Or headsets, perhaps. History shows that most major technology revolutions are rarely leaps, but instead evolutionary products of incremental steps composed of many existing building blocks met with market readiness. The Web 3.0 innovations of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFTs that are taking shape in front of us will no doubt be among these essential building blocks. With an ability to touch both our physical and virtual worlds, cryptocurrencies could form the monetary basis for all economic activity in the metaverse. NFTs make it possible for unique items to exist and assets to be exclusively owned in the digital realm. The very foundations and infrastructure for the metaverse and its virtual worlds could be built on blockchain technology. Perhaps the metaverse is simply how we experience the third major phase of the web. Or maybe in its purest, most decentralized form, the metaverse is built entirely on top of it. In any case, it's hard to imagine a future where the two are not inextricably linked. This third phase of the internet also poses some of the most interesting questions for the world of intellectual property. What will the impact be on digital property rights in a secure marketplace governed by smart contracts? How will copyrights play in digital worlds with their own art and governance? Is there merit in considering a new type of protection category outside of patents and copyrights? In our very first IP Watchdog episode, Kristen Hansen, patent strategist and software patent guru here at Aurora, leads a discussion along with our all-star patent panel digging into the fundamentals of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and NFTs, and why the hype, the current state of the technology, questions around what web evolution, blockchain, and NFT technology means for IP ownership, and critical strategies for protecting blockchain and cryptocurrency innovations. The first half hour of this episode is the best, most succinct, understandable overview I've personally heard on blockchain, crypto, NFTs, and the evolution of the web. What follows is a wonderful conversation around potential IP world impacts and some very practical tips on drafting strategies and working with inventors who are innovating in these spaces. Kristen is also joined today by our always exceptional group of IP experts, including Dr. Ashley Sloat, President and Director of Patent Strategy here at Aurora, David Jackrell, President of Jackrell Consulting, Shelley Couturier, Patent Strategist and Search Specialist, and Daniel Wright, Patent Strategist. And one final administrative note before joining the panel. We're hiring. If you'd like to join our growing team and participate in great conversations like these, go to aurorapatents.com/careers to learn more and apply. We'll also include that link in the show notes. All right, without further ado, take it away, Crypto Crew.
All right, and we'll let Kristen take it away and educate us on
Okay, perfect.
all this good stuff. Highly relevant, hot topic. You know, every time I turn on the business news or whatever, it's talking about
my tanked crypto.
Yeah, crypto and NFTs and what's the future.
Well, I'm hoping to do a little bit of a tutorial too, because some of this stuff I knew, but there were so many things that I went, oh, I had no idea. So I thought this group might appreciate that, having, you go in and out of software or you don't do software full time. It's kind of nice to get a quick primer.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the overview that I'm going to go through, blockchain and cryptocurrency, why so much hype? We'll talk about the state of the technology, and we'll talk about protecting these types of innovations. So why are you seeing all this cryptocurrency and blockchain tech out there in the last few years? And the short answer is actually trust, and trust issues with digital money have really been overcome. And the long answer to that is they've overcome using blockchain, because blockchain actually gives you a cryptographic way to store and use and access data. And so I will go into what each is and how they interact. But basically, digital currency has been just distrusted. It has not had a very centralized way or view. And with blockchain, it can have that now. And so all you've seen is cryptocurrency, 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 and nobody really knows exactly how it works or what it is, but they want in. Okay. And it's, like I said, it's very secure. It's decentralized. So there's really no third-party meddling here. It's not underwritten like the Department of Treasury gold and cash, just a different exchange. And the decentralization of this means no government, no banks, no data providers, no Facebook and Google in your inbox or in your business. I think there will be ways that these companies will glom onto these technologies and offer kind of a hybrid model, but we haven't seen that yet. Where you have, it's convenient to have Google provide you this, but Google's not going to look at certain things, even though they say, right, that they're not looking. They may in other realms. With these realms, you may get something a little more semi-private than you have today. And then identity masking. It actually is a way to perform things in the digital money world without really showing your identity. You're not a user who has an account at a bank with a name and a social security number. This is really different. This is more like an on-screen username that you came up with is tied to a pseudo sort of account number, and it can be tied to a wallet that knows a little bit more about you, but none of those things are connected in a way that shares data that way. They're kind of siloed. So that can be good and bad, of course, right? Mm-hmm. If you mask your identity, you might have some government problems, might have some tax problems, you might be hiding drug money, right? So overall, what is blockchain? Blockchain tech actually allows multiple parties to transact in a peer-to-peer manner. And this is truly without that third-party bank or government or company entity overseeing that peer-to-peer network. If you have an email account that is owned by Google, Google can oversee all of that. They try not to look into that. They don't capture that data appropriately and mine it, because it's your personal email and they have.
You're using air quotes.
Right. I am, because, they have access to it. What they're doing with it, they're not telling us, right?
Right.
So, and that's all the cost of doing business as a consumer who wants ease of use, right? I want Google to set this up for me. I want Facebook to set this up for me because I don't have the time to figure it out myself. I just want the account, and I just want to do the things associated with the account. And that's very traditional, and it's very consumer forward and convenient, but there are some issues with that pop up. And blockchain is a way to solve some of those issues by decentralizing that account entirely, it's immutable, which basically means it's unchangeable over time. If you do a transaction, you can't undo that transaction. If you pay somebody some cryptocurrency using a blockchain technology, it gets timestamped and logged in the blockchain. And to undo that, that person has to pay you back in yet another transaction, which gets verified and timestamped and put in the blockchain. But you cannot modify and change that blockchain by removing. It's just additive. So it is, that's very interesting from a security standpoint, because that means in order to actually hack that, if you're going to change one block in the chain, everyone else in there would immediately know that had been tampered with, because you're passing these chains around in order to verify transactions. And so if hackers wanted to actually corrupt a blockchain system, they would actually need to change every block in the chain and change that across all the distributed versions of that chain. Because one piece of blockchain is, let's look at the network of people, let's create a ledger, let's use a hash to let people connect to that ledger, and let's log in that ledger everything that goes on. And in order to approve everything that goes on in that ledger, we want some sort of unanimous or some sort of quorum amongst our members that say this can happen. And so because of that quorum and that distribution, this is super secure. The other piece of this is blockchain is programmable, and that means it's actually got programs stored within the blockchain that execute basically when predetermined conditions are met. So you can imagine that there's probably a lot of inventions coming down the pike about that, where I have an algorithm, it runs this way, and oh, by the way, I put it in the blockchain, right? So that makes it kind of patentably interesting until it doesn't, right? Until everyone's doing that.
Like AI and ML.
Yep. There's a unanimousness to this. Like I indicated, all network participants really agree to the validity of each record in the blockchain. And I can get into this later, but part of what that looks like is proof of work. And if I'm confirming that particular things, and I don't have to confirm it as a user, but my account would confirm it by automatic comparison. So if I'm participating in that unanimous checking process, I can get paid by proof of work, which is just a minor little, amount, but it means that I am part of the network, I am approving in the network, and I am continuing to use the network. The other part of this, I think I called this out as well. It's distributed. So this is a digital ledger technology, and a digital ledger technology can be anything from an Excel file to a list of cryptographically curated just data. And the way they use this and distribute this is interesting because it really does go to every member of the network or every peer in the peer-to-peer network, right? And they do that instead of passing this upward to like a Google or a Facebook or a Twitter to verify things. And the other thing, it's anonymous. Like I said, they don't know your identity. Your username can be some pseudonym. It does not have to be you as a person. It could also be personas, right? So maybe I have a work persona and a life persona, right? This is my personal email and this is my work email, and they both have different personas when I access blockchain services. Okay, in that same vein, what is cryptocurrency? So cryptocurrency is also decentralized in that it uses blockchain, and it does pass around kind of the idea of, is this okay to make this transaction? Can I transfer this to this person? Are they trustworthy? Are they able to confirm that they are part of this network and that they have an account or they have a digital wallet, right? And so you've seen these. I put just a quick blip up there: Litecoin, Ethereum coin, Bitcoin, Ripple coin. There's many more. But in the end, cryptocurrency is data with a value and an address. It is no more than that. It has a financial value because of how that it was set up, but it's data with a value and an address. Transactions completed using crypto are maintained in a public ledger, so a blockchain, and because of that, they're super secure. They are checked and rechecked, and they are very hard to hack. So the issue with people saying, oh, it's fake currency and it's really not, like the same as cash or the underwritten gold of the US Treasury, that is true, but it has a different way of being confirmed and a different way of being trustworthy. And it's just a different exchange mechanism. So as soon as we start to see it that way and see it used for certain industries that way, it may become a little bit more mainstream and understood in what we are doing. But as a side, in order to get cryptocurrency, you have to have a digital wallet. And in order to get cryptocurrency in that digital wallet, you actually use real money. Okay, so you can purchase cryptocurrency.
Mining though for a while too. I don't know how common that is now, but there was mining though too, right?
Yes, you can
buy certain equipment and it would essentially mine Bitcoin or whatever.
Yep. So the other piece of that mining that Ashley says, that could be from actively mining something and problem solving to get paid in tokens or in cryptocurrency coins. And another piece of that mining could be, if I'm going to confirm what's going on in the ledger itself, maybe I'm going to solve a small puzzle piece. And then for solving that, I will get paid a pittance of crypto coin, right, for doing that. So there's other ways to make money, but truly, if you want to trade it or you want to do something in large value, you usually exchange real money into cryptocurrency. And it's in the stock market, so it can change. The value can change, just like real money. And then financial transactions performed without the help of a third party. So again, no banks, no government, no. If you're using an application, it's really not a company-owned application for the purpose of owning what you are using it for. So they don't own your crypto, they don't own your money, right? They don't own anything that means money. So we'll cover it in a second, but NFTs would be kind of a version of cryptocurrency that isn't financial per se. So cryptocurrency features, you can imagine the pros are the secure transactions, no permission needed to use. You just download an app and you're able to use it, get a wallet, right? They're fast. They're like under 2 minutes, beginning to end, anywhere in the world. The locations of the participants is just completely irrelevant. You can do this with anyone in the world. Your identity can be hidden in the same way, and there's no physical form. It is all virtual and no central banking system. And some of these are kind of, as of yet, I can see maybe we would get some hybrids out there in the future, but this is how it works today. And of course, cons, they're completely irreversible. You do get one kind of trigger that says, are you sure, right? If you want to create this transaction or perform this transaction. But once you've done that, they're irreversible. And like I said, you have to get that other person to pay you back if you've purchased something and you want the money back, that sort of thing. There is a public transparency of the transaction details, and it isn't in full and it isn't easily kind of discerned. A distributed ledger is public. It usually is just printed up to a server and it is publicly viewable and readable. But the beauty of it is you can't access it and do anything with it without the hash, which is just a piece, just a key that you can access the network itself with, and without the trust of the network. So even though you can see numbers and data and things, you don't see what the transactions mean and what they actually did. It's just stored, cryptographically stored data, I guess. But if somebody could get a hold of that and figure out what you were doing with a lot of effort, they may be able to get in there and act like they are part of the network itself, right? And that they are looking to provide pieces to the consensus. And if they do it in a way that is against 3/4 of the people there, they might influence outcomes. So if they put in there, I don't trust this transaction 9 times a day, they might be blocking transactions that are true and good, but they're blocking them from occurring, which could be a problem, right? You're blocking payments from happening. You're blocking transactions from occurring like they should. So there are ways to influence networks like that as being part of the network and being just a malicious actor. And you can do that by, seeing this public piece and guessing at what it would be for, who's using it, and then trying to be part of that group. So there's a lot of theft of identity and just distrust involved there with anybody new coming in. And that's why there's all these checks to make sure people are part of the system, that they are appropriately vetted, and that they have the correct hash, keys, anything, right? And then the other piece, the user-based behavior, the tracing and tracking, it's kind of difficult, and it could be a con, just if there's theft, if there's problems going on, right, tax evasion, things like that. And by the way, if you make money in cryptocurrency, you do need to put that on your tax form.
Well, I don't think there's any problem with that right now.
Yeah, nobody's making any money. Okay, and I alluded to this a little bit, but here's a pictograph that just helps show you how changes are made on a blockchain. So at the far left, person A wants to make a change to the blockchain. They create that change, they use the hash to do it, and this change will create a new block. This block is actually broadcast to all the computers on the distributed network, so peer-to-peer there, and those computers approve or disapprove the change. If it's unanimous or if it's set up to be a consensus, consensus rules where you have a good majority or whatnot, depending on how it's set up, they approve it, and then the new block is actually added to the chain and it's permanent. So it's really straightforward. It's very clear on how this happens. Where you will get lost when you get an inventor reading this stuff to you is in the data and in all of the rigmarole that goes into the cryptography and the back and forth going on. It's usually not clear. So when I pull inventions like this, and I've only done 3 or 4 myself, but I have been very motivated to say, let's go through a flow chart. Let's do a transaction, what happens in your system, so that I can see if it's different than a typical blockchain system, and so that I can see where each piece of data is being used and how much importance is put on it. Because if it's just a hash, it's just a hash. And if you haven't created any interesting data structure that's new in the industry, I don't care. We'll just call it a hash and be done with it. But if there's something new about it, it's another piece of the invention that we have to dig into. So by making them go through a flow chart themselves and go through one transaction manually, it helps that process. I ended up with one of the applications I had written years ago ended up with so many figures in it, just showing how the data moved around. And it was it was 2019, so it wasn't brand new crypto and blockchain tech, but it was newer and newish. So we didn't know what would be interesting and what would be patentable and what was out there. It was just too difficult at the time to figure out the search structure and the prior art and like who was doing what. A lot of it was done in China first, and so you've got a lot of Chinese art that isn't available quite yet because it wasn't public. So it was kind of messy. And it's that first one is not through the patent system, so I have no idea if I did it right, did it wrong, can fix it, whatever. Okay, and so a cryptocurrency coin example here. So if to push this through a blockchain with crypto, just so you understand kind of how that could happen, you would start with the initial creation of a coin, so like a Bitcoin, and every transaction would be confirmed and stored in a ledger, so a blockchain, right? And that involves identical copies of that transaction that are distributed among peers, maintaining this public blockchain. And it's not just the transaction, it's the entire ledger every time, by the way, that goes out typically. And it's large, but the way digital data works today, it's no big deal that it's that large, but it is large, and it gets larger with each transaction. That actual public ledger, though, it doesn't include information about real world identities of owners of the coin. It's just basically an address, kind of similar to an account number, but it's like a data address, and it's a balance of what the coin is for each account. And then the digital wallets themselves actually use encrypted electronic signatures, and they serve as kind of the cryptographic proof that this transaction originated at this owner of the wallet, right? And then to record a transaction to the public ledger. Ashley was getting into the mining aspect. So miners are really known as kind of decentralized computing systems that are participating to support the public ledger. And that means everyone on the network could be a miner. And they would approve the transaction by working to solve some sort of increasingly complex problem. And the first miner would solve a puzzle and add a block representing the transaction. And so you can see how it can get kind of complex with what you have to do in order to mine. And there are different ways of mining. That's just one way. And then once the block is mined and added to the ledger itself, everything's been approved, and all conforming transactions are permanent. The miner who actually helped to approve the transaction is rewarded with a small transaction fee. And that is the proof of work. Okay, so if you hear proof of work or you hear proof of stake would be I've bought in enough that I am a member and I have a stake in this network. So there are a couple of ways to do that, and you'll see these through the industry. Okay, next definition, and I hope last for you, what is an NFT? That's a non-fungible token. And an NFT could be a piece of unique digital artwork, a domain name, a rare book, an in-game item, a unique sneaker in a limited run fashion line, an event ticket or a coupon, an essay, a digital collectible of sorts, like a bitmap, a unique bitmap. But basically, it's non-fungible, and it's a non-fungible token because it's one of a kind. It represents a real-world item or like digital content, and it also uses blockchain to digitally record transactions that occur with NFTs. The main difference between an NFT and a cryptocurrency, though, there's no fungible trade amongst NFTs because they're unique representations of assets, and no one NFT is exactly the same as another NFT. In cryptocurrency, one Bitcoin is exactly the same as another Bitcoin, and that just doesn't happen with NFTs. So this becomes yet another way of trade, okay? Yet another system of protecting and trading these items on the left, the digital artwork, the domain name, a book, right?
Something though, yeah, okay, it looks like you're talking about this because I think this is a frequently misrepresented bit about NFTs, is that you're not putting the item on the blockchain, you're putting a receipt on the blockchain that indicates something else that is often not, not necessarily supported. And so, sure, I've got a fancy thing on a blockchain that says I own this JPEG on a server somewhere.
Yep.
That is fundamentally different from having the shoe in real life. That is fundamentally different from having the JPEG on your hard drive, because also if you have that JPEG up on a public server that anyone can go look at, anyone can go right click or screenshot the image and keep it themselves. And so the only thing you're actually paying for is a receipt, not the thing itself.
Yep. So you can imagine maybe like original artwork way back in the day. You know, if we had Monets as NFTs, they would maybe grow even more so in cost and in value, because you could use that NFT structure to authenticate in an easier way than having the museum involved, in a cheaper way than having the museum involved, and anybody else who would have to verify, right? Okay. They are also deployed as individual chains of ownership with smart contracts, and they track a specific asset. So that's what I mean. If you track the artwork over time, you might create more value of that artwork because it is an original. And like Dan said, you own, it shows chains of ownership. It shows the data that you own this piece, but it doesn't mean you physically have it in your possession.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also where I'm gonna protest the provenance, because sure, you can make a digital receipt that says I own a Monet, but then somebody can go steal the Monet.
Yes. Yep, and you lose it, right? Because it's stuff. Okay, so before we go back to those three concepts, I wanted to just give you this evolution of the web. I thought this was interesting. This is from a podcast, the Tim Ferriss Show, and it was interesting to see how the web had changed over time and how they categorized it. I really never categorized it. So Web 1.0 was basically 1990 to about 2004. It was open platform. Nobody really owned it or controlled it, outside maybe the government, right? It started as a government thing. And products and content were limited. There wasn't a lot of blogs and a lot of user created content. It was a lot of, this is from a magazine, and I put it up here in a digital form on the web. And the advertisements on the internet were banned at the time. And you had very few content creators. It wasn't what it is today. Okay, and today, this is about 2004 to now, and maybe a few years from now, this is open and closed platform options. And what that means is, in an open platform option, I've chosen to purchase my domain, and I run things from my domain. I might use, a Google or a Microsoft server setup to host, but I don't use Google services, and I don't use Google's platform. So I'm not using Gmail. I'm not using Facebook to provide content. I'm not using Blogger, as a basis to write my blog. I have got my own domain. The other side of that is a closed platform. And that is actually using some of the bigger names out of complete and total ease to be able to upload content quickly and easily and formatted without a whole lot of effort on the user part. And right now we are in the age of rich internet applications. We've got interactive, Google Maps, social media, semantic web. And in the future, we're looking at this Web 3.0. This is something that is underway. You do see a little bit of this these days. It is likely going to be open platform, and it may or may not use blockchain. This decentralizes a lot of things. This takes the data put up there owned by users and data generators and fewer large companies. And another way to look at this, I put this together because I thought this was interesting too. Web 1.0 was a read-only. You had your Netscapes, your AOLs, your Microsoft Googles, and it wasn't a true read-only. You could make some changes, but it was typically read-only. Web 2.0 is kind of a read-write, and that's where we are now. You've got big Google, Apple, Facebook, Spotify, et cetera, Twitter. They own large portions of market share for what people are doing on the web. And Web 3.0, this will likely be open, and users will be able to build and orchestrate their own platforms and content a little bit easier. And they'll keep this out of the big data CEO's power structure, which means data hoarding, narratives, and censorship can be owned and operated by the people. So we'll see where we go. But I thought, the evolution was interesting. So I have a question for the group. What does this web evolution, blockchain, and the NFT tech mean for IP ownership? Will we see some sort of change in the patent system for inventions that involve digital content and software? Are we going to see new protection art units? Are we going to see a new type of category outside of patents and copywriting? Dan, I bet you have an opinion on this.
No.
Oh, he maybe stepped away.
No, sorry. I'll be honest. I had tuned out for just a moment because my parents were texting me, so I wasn't quite sure. You called me out, and I'm now like, I feel like I need to say something intelligent. I wasn't.
No worries. I'm sorry.
Split second there.
I'm sorry, and there's a lot of data there too, so I know it's getting late. No, I apologize. I don't mean to call you out on that, but my thought was, are you thinking we might see some changes in the patent system around this blockchain and NFT property ownership technology? Like I had up here, maybe new protection units, or maybe we would have a new category outside of patents and copywriting. Or do you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I see this. I mean, a new art unit, I think makes definite sense with the sheer market interest and number of people filing stuff on it. It would behoove the patent office to have, and I'm honestly would be surprised if they don't have a new art unit already with the interest of it. Additional forms of intellectual property in response to this type of stuff. Like, do we now have something besides patents and copyright that's specific to entries on the spreadsheet that is a blockchain? I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, maybe NFTs being kind of a transactional thing might be something different than because you don't get a copyright.
Printing, because the copyright, I guess you could still kind of print maybe NFTs, right? Because right now the copyright system requires hard copies of things. I guess you could maybe still put NFTs on a disc.
Well, again, the NFT is just a receipt, and so with the copyright, mine's so cool. You've got a unique image. I've got an NFT it's somewhere on a spreadsheet that says my username string is associated with this bit of data that indicates the receipt towards. And we all just sort of agree that it indicates a receipt towards this unique image. And I don't see how that is anything beyond like regular, if I wanted to go now print a bunch of copies of that and distribute that and sell those images, I don't quite see how that's anything independent from, do I have the copyright? Perhaps you could write a human law that says, a national law that says we the people acknowledge this particular distributed ledger as indicating towards copyright. So if you
Okay.
want to have the copyright for a given piece of work, you must somehow, but then you get over the whole anonymity of what the cryptography of the usernames is supposed to
Sure.
be. That, okay, you must publicly let us know who you are, and you publicly must have visible on this blockchain your receipt that has a certain indication towards a given work of art. And if you satisfy that, then we all agree that you have copyright towards the object indicated in your receipt. And then I don't see how that's any more helpful than just
A copyright.
a copyright. We, the people, agree to form a database that anyone can access of who owns the copyright for given works of art,
I think that
whether it's distributed or not.
I think the bigger point that brings up, though, is that elements of Web3 are fundamentally in opposition to the general premise of the intellectual property system, right? Because as Dan points out, the whole intellectual property system is based on the idea that in exchange for some limited monopoly, some ownership rights, whatever, I give to the public knowledge and share knowledge and information, technology, whatever, with the public in exchange for those rights. But the whole essence of aspects of Web3, the blockchain elements, NFTs, and things like that is all around anonymity, or at least, as much anonymity as you want to have with it. And so it seems like those two elements are kind of in opposition to one another.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. I'm not a copyright attorney, but I wonder if an artist makes a physical painting, and their own painting, and then they sell that painting, the original painting, to someone. So now someone owns that painting. Can the owner of that painting make prints of that painting and then sell it? So does buying an original painting confer the copyright to you, or does the copyright still owned by the owner or by the creator, by the artist?
I think it's still owned by the creator, because unless there's a true assignment, because you think about it, I can go buy Cat in the Hat.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I can, take Cat in the Hat and, decide to make 1 million copies of it and go sell it myself, right?
Right. And that, even if
it has to be some kind of work for hire provision or some kind of actual assignment.
Right. Even if Dr. Seuss wrote down Cat in the Hat on some pieces of paper and you bought the original, doesn't mean that you can copy it and sell it, right?
Right.
Same thing. I think probably from logic would go from it would follow for an NFT. If you're buying an original piece of digital art, that doesn't give you the copyright to it, right?
Right. Yeah. If they copy, somebody, the creator of the creator of the work of art, or the creative work, they can maybe copyright it, but then again, they're also revealing who they are, and the anonymity goes away, assuming that they want to be anonymous.
Yeah.
I also say the digital art. Digital art is infinitely reproducible to the easiest extreme. The fundamental difference between owning the Mona Lisa and a copy of the Mona Lisa is quite clear, I think, to all of us, because of the provenance and the history of the physical good that is the Mona Lisa versus a copy of the Mona Lisa.
Right.
Whereas it's just a JPEG or a PNG.
It's an argument, I feel like, for and against NFTs, because what NFTs do in a way is make it possible to have an original of a digital piece of art, where otherwise, what are you going to sell someone a computer?
No, but again,
you made the art on. It doesn't make
you don't have the original. You have a receipt saying that I spent money towards this thing. In a weird way, there is no original.
You don't have it in digital. You can you not? this is my maybe naivete around the space, because there's definitely some. You have this receipt, but isn't there a way for you to view the thing that you have a receipt for, even in some kind of digital, in a digital wallet? You know what I mean? Is it?
So putting the image itself on the blockchain would be absurdly wasteful, a huge amount of data, slow everything down. So no one actually does that. what is commonly done is that there will be some sort of URL that can be readily, or some string that can readily spit out just a link to some external hosting site.
Like a different room, essentially, for you to view the thing.
Except for it's on the public ledger, so people can access it. And so also, you don't necessarily have control. You are trusting the host of the image that it will continue to be there. So hilariously, you could buy an NFT for something hosted on a site, you spend your money, and then, oh, the company hosting it couldn't pay the server, couldn't pay for the server space anymore. So it all gets pulled away. And now your URL indicates nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I think this goes back to Kristen's first slide pretty much, which is trust.
Yeah.
You are trusting an artist, you're trusting the system, that you're putting your money down, and that everyone agrees that you own the quote unquote original, whatever that means. And you're right, Dan, exactly. It's just a receipt, but there's this trust that's been built up. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, on the a couple of random thoughts. I know we're almost done, but like cryptocurrency in general, there's a lot of people talking about it now, and like, what does it mean, and what is it for, and what is it really good for? A lot of smart people, at least I don't have a super strong opinion either way, but a lot of smart people have said it's basically just the greater fool. There's no value inherent. There's no inherent value. And people argue back and forth about that. That's the real crux of the issue. Is there inherent value? So people argue about it. But NFTs and crypto, I think they're very interesting and sort of like revolutionary on one side from the economic kind of analysis of it. Like, what are these things really worth? Do they really have value? Do you really own something or not? From the patent side and the technology side, I actually think it's a lot more straightforward. You've got software, you've got encryption, you've got cryptography, you've got blockchain, you've got these real inventions, these real technical things that people are doing that you can, look at and patent. So in that sense, no easier or harder than AI or ML or, all the same issues with them, not with 101, basically, right? I think will be there for crypto and blockchain, but I don't know, the controversy, if you will, or the weirdness of them, I feel like is more on the economic, socio-economic side of things, less on the technical and like patent stuff that would be relevant for a patent,
I think the one most interesting argument I've seen for NFTs, at least, crypto is a whole other thing, but NFTs is that it allows artists to potentially reap more benefit than they've historically been able to reap from their creative works, right? Because, people may be more willing to give them money in support of them through this mechanism because that's maybe more accessible or easier to find them than it would have otherwise been. And so I can now put my money and share my money with lots of different artists who I believe in, support, want to whatever, whereas maybe they were less findable before. So I think that's an potential interesting aspect of the NFT world.
I'll say, as someone who participates in a fair amount of online art production, publication, discourse, exchange, right now NFTs are making it more complicated. You have to go through the rigmarole of setting up the wallet, getting all your hashes. You have to deal with the opaqueness to a certain extent we're talking about how public and open, the blockchain allows transactions to be. There is many new studies demonstrating how much of it is wash trading. There's far less of an interest than the people selling NFTs want artists to believe are. There's many cases of artists going in trying to sell their art as NFTs. They find themselves overwhelmed by the entry costs of how you actually go and mint your NFT. And then there's no actual market for it because the examples of things going at crazy prices, a lot of that is wash trading where bad actors are selling it to themselves to fabricate seeming interest. And on the other hand, there's already tons of ways to go celebrate and support the artists that you like. A lot of the artists who have public activity on the web, who have their open portfolios, they've got various web pages where you can throw with a credit card. It sounds like, no, if you don't trust your credit card company, what are you going to do? But with credit card, with other already established digital payment systems, you can send them money. A lot of them have online merch stores. There's tons of ways to do that. And from a perspective on in, those have been far more healthy and successful for artists than trying to mint NFTs and then sell them to a non-existent audience.
Okay, so it's kind of a difficult marketplace, you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically the strategy for these sorts of inventions, you're going to need to do a wider foreign filing, and you want to do that because it actually has sales and in-use occurrences possible from any location with a computing device. You're dealing with financial transactions, which happen all over the world. And also, one note, China is a huge player in inventions and companies for blockchain. So always file in China. And as far as what's out there right now, you've probably gotten thousands of blockchain or cryptocurrency sort of technology on file. There's not a whole lot allowed yet, maybe in the hundreds. So it's still an open market. So make sure you're mining those fields if you have inventors who do things tangential to this. And also litigation isn't super common yet. And as soon as somebody profits from it, these patents, that'll come. But right now it's kind of an open market. And then the other piece, consider trade secrets before disclosing all your concepts in the patent application. This might be especially important if you do blockchain in a slightly different way, if your cryptocurrency is new and different and functions differently than typical. When you're looking at the claims, this is going to look like method claims and system claims and computer readable medium claims, and they're all going to look very mirrored. You'll probably have a single method, a system that kind of copies that method, and a computer readable medium that also mirrors the method or system. And that is because I think you'll get a lot of restriction requirements if you do not do that in these fields. I think your claims would be different enough method-wise that if you had two method claims that even were slightly different, I think you're going to get a restriction. Examples of potentially patentable core technologies, when you're interviewing inventors, you may see things like blockchain tech changes, distributed ledger changes, data structure differences. Remember, new data structures can be a way to get over a subject matter 101 rejection. So if you have a new data structure, describe it. Transaction protocols, processing and validation methods might be new. We've got digital wallet stuff and apps and software that might be new or work different than typical. Smart contract platforms, different ways of mining, consensus methodologies, services, applications of any of the above. I mean, it's software, and so it's wide open for combinations. Remember in the specification, get your subject matter eligibility stuff in there. It will happen. I don't see a way around this. You're adding business method, financial ideas, and software in general in like a package almost with these inventions. So I think you will see these rejections more often unless something changes in the landscape. But to avoid those, build in your descriptions for the advantages, build in your technical solutions to technical problems, describe practical applications, describe improvements to technology, and add your specific results outcomes. I don't always like to do this. Improvements to technology tends to denigrate prior art if you do them improperly. So be careful, but also get them in there for this type of technology because you will likely need to rely on them in office action responses and appeals. Example advantages these inventions can maybe provide: cost and error reduction, tamper resistance or security over conventional transactions, fraud deterrence over conventional transactions, and reduction in the errors or system failures over conventional transactions. And some of these might go the opposite way, so it just depends on what your invention would be. And then one last thing for the specification: adjust for open source. This software is typically open source. It is done so for a reason. It is in the public domain. And so you just want to be careful to cover in your application why is your innovation new or different, or what problems that existed before did you solve? And ensure you have included descriptions for aspects that are not part of the open source pieces. If you have several pieces that are not open source, make sure those are thoroughly described, because you may need to rely on them. And the last thing that you can look at your leisure, this was a patent I did in 2019, patent application for Google. And it was basically about creating a self-sovereign identity account and being able to host that account and let people control or not control that account without being a Google, an Apple, a Facebook. So this was a user-owned account. They did their own thing. They used a distributed log technology here in the right-hand corner. They used public keys and private keys for the crypto, and they had policies and permissions for their account. And basically, they were able to set up a blockchain system for a user to own an account. And this application in particular was about, can I provide access control? Can I provide device control? And all using this account, right? So maybe I have a building with a super, and the super owns 3 of the 4 apartments, and he wants to provide utilities and door locks and maybe rent payment possibilities. He can all do that through an account like this without being monitored by a third party, and without having to rely on a third party too. This also means, which can happen with a third party, but it means it can occur by the actual person who owns the account being able to provide access or provide things through the account to other users. So it's an interesting idea to have maybe an entire apartment building on the same network and being able to share and maybe share costs, share, if I locked myself out, maybe my neighbor can unlock because I gave him permission earlier to unlock my door, right?
Right.
So things like that.
Can I point out the irony
Yes.
of that application being owned by Google?
Yes, yes, you can. Believe me, so did the inventor. The inventor is just a brilliant UK man who does a lot of contracting for Google, and he just lovely the way he went through these. Every time he had a description, he would say, and unlike Google, and then he would describe his invention. And so it was great. It was great to see that, even their engineering teams are thinking. Yeah.
Back to the trusted environment.
Yeah, exactly. But, okay, key takeaways are really just, there's lots of innovations coming with blockchain. Web3 might be an interesting growth step. And when drafting blockchains, build in help for yourself with that subject matter eligibility, rejection, content. I mean, if it continues like it is, it will still be painful in this field.
No end in sight there.
No end in sight. All right, that's it. Any questions or comments?
No, that was awesome. Good rundown of the space now when all the talking heads talk about these things. And now I did appreciate the nuance of the receipt versus the the NFT, the whole thing. Like I guess I understood the digital room thing, but I kind of thought, yeah, it was like way more accessible, potentially a lot more controllable. So that's interesting. I didn't appreciate that. And
I didn't either. Thank you, Dan.
So
yeah,
it's excited about the NFT thing. When I told him earlier that was happening, he already got.
So well, I think we're still recording, so I'll.
No worries. Well, thank you all.
All right, that's all for today, folks. Thanks for listening, and remember to check us out at aurorapatents.com for more great podcasts, blogs, and videos covering all things patent strategy. And if you're an agent or attorney and would like to be part of the discussion, or an inventor with a topic you'd like to hear discussed, email us at podcast@aurorapatents.com. Do remember that this podcast does not constitute legal advice, and until next time, keep calm and patent on.